Back when Hollywood was young, cowboy movies weren't just movies. They were super popular. And if every cowboy hero needed a best friend, Gabby Hayes was the best one around. He rode with famous cowboys like Roy Rogers and Randolph Scott, giving smart advice and funny one-liners in his scratchy voice. But behind his beard and laughs, Gabby had secrets he never told anyone until now. For years, fans wondered what really happened between Hayes and the quiet actor Randolph Scott. Why did their friendship on screen suddenly disappear? Was there more going on behind the scenes than just cowboy friendship? After many years of staying quiet, Gabby Hayes finally spoke up, and what he said surprised everyone. Back when Hollywood was young, cowboy movies ruled the big screen, and every cowboy needed a faithful best friend. Among all the actors who played that part, Gabby Hayes was special. When people talk about the best cowboy sidekicks, his name is always near the top. He was a star of the golden days of westerns. Gabby Hayes was born George Francis Hayes on May 7, 1885. He was the third of 7 kids in a big family led by Elizabeth and Clark Hayes. Even though he often said he was from Wellsville, New York, he was really born in a small town called Stannards in the western part of the state, not far from Pennsylvania. His dad was a busy guy. He ran the Hayes Hotel and also worked in the oil business, which was just starting to grow big in that area. George grew up with his brothers and sisters, brothers William, Morrison, and Clark, and sisters Nellie and Hattie. His brother Morrison joined the U.S. Army and sadly died fighting in World War I. George himself had a pretty normal small-town childhood. He went to school in Stannards, and even back then showed signs of having big dreams. While still in high school, he played semi-pro baseball, but he didn't want to stay in one place. When he was just 17, he packed his bags and left home looking for something more exciting. He started working with a traveling theater group, even spent some time working with a circus, and finally found his place in vaudeville. He was great on stage, especially in funny skits where he'd play a clumsy character called the Rube Constable. That vaudeville career kept him busy and successful for years. In 1914, George married Olive E. Ireland, whose father worked making glass. Olive didn't just sit on the sidelines. She jumped into show business too, performing with her husband using the stage name Dorothy Earle. Just to be clear, she wasn't the same Dorothy Earle who worked in movies as a writer and actress. By 1928, George was doing well enough to retire early. He and Olive moved into a home in Baldwin, Long Island, thinking they could finally relax. But then the Great Depression hit, and like so many others, George lost everything when the stock market crashed in 1929. Just like that, their retirement plans were ruined. That's when Olive came up with a new idea. She told George to try acting in movies. So together they packed up their lives and took a big chance, heading west to Los Angeles. When Hayes moved to Los Angeles, he got to Hollywood right as silent movies were ending. He started by getting small parts, tiny roles, background characters, whatever he could get. Nothing big at first. But then he had a lucky meeting with a movie producer named T.M. Carr. Something about Hayes' look caught Carr's attention, and next thing you know, Carr had put him in about 30 movies over the next 6 years. In the early days, Hayes played all kinds of characters, even the bad guys sometimes. He'd even show up as 2 different people in the same movie. But westerns were really where he found his place. Those were the golden days of cowboy movie series, where the same familiar faces and sidekicks kept coming back in each film. Hayes fit right in, even though he wasn't a real cowboy. In fact, he didn't learn how to ride a horse until he was in his 40s. Off camera, Hayes was nothing like the dusty, grumbling characters he played. He was clean-cut, well-spoken, and acted very polished. Funny enough, he wasn't even a fan of westerns. He found them boring and repetitive, which, to be fair, a lot of those cheap movies kind of were. Still, audiences loved him in that scrappy, wise-cracking sidekick role. He became known for saying phrases like "consarn it," "you're darn tootin'," "dadgummit," "durn it," "pernickety," and "young whippersnapper." Between 1935 and 1939, he played Windy Halliday, the wise-cracking sidekick to William Boyd's Hopalong Cassidy, and quickly became a familiar face in the Western world. But in 1939, after fighting about money with Paramount Pictures, he walked away from the role. He didn't stay out of work for long, though. That same year, he made an important move to Republic Pictures. There was just one problem. Paramount still owned the name Windy Halliday, so Republic gave him a new name, Gabby Whitaker. Same cranky attitude, same lovable sidekick, just a new name. His first movie under the new name was Southward Ho, riding alongside Roy Rogers. That movie marked the beginning of an amazing partnership. Between 1938 and 1943, Gabby Hayes and Roy Rogers teamed up for an incredible 41 movies, a partnership that still stands as one of the most successful in Western movie history. Their friendship on screen was electric. Gabby wasn't just there for laughs. He was smart, full of wisdom, and often the one pointing the hero in the right direction. Even though he had different character names from movie to movie, his personality never changed. Grumpy but loyal, with a talent for saying exactly what needed to be said. Their partnership started with Under Western Stars and turned into a Western movie machine. Hits like Red River Valley, Sunset Serenade, and Man from Cheyenne just kept coming. Audiences couldn't get enough. Roy was already becoming famous, but even he said Gabby helped him become a better actor. Where Roy brought the charm and quiet confidence, Gabby added color, warmth, and humor that gave those movies their magic. Sure, there were other great pairs from that time. Gene Autry and Smiley Burnett brought a musical twist to the cowboy formula, while William Boyd's Hopalong Cassidy had different sidekicks, including Gabby Hayes before his time with Rogers. But none had the consistency or emotional connection of the Rogers-Hayes team. They weren't just stars, they were a comfort. Their movies felt like visiting old friends, especially during tough times. They reminded people that good would always win, no matter how rough things got. Hayes spent much of his career playing the dependable sidekick, and when it came to Western royalty, he shared the screen with some of the greatest. He partnered with Randolph Scott in 6 films, including one of their best collaborations, 1946's Bad Man's Territory. Now, Bad Man's Territory wasn't exactly trying to be subtle. This was a black and white cheap Western that tried to get attention by throwing together every famous outlaw the writers could think of. Jesse James, Belle Starr, the Dalton Gang, Sam Bass, you name it. They were there. Randolph Scott played a straight-laced Texas sheriff on a mission to civilize the wild borderlands and make them part of the Oklahoma Territory. Under director Tim Whelan's excited but somewhat messy direction, the movie raced from shootouts to political intrigue with plenty of Western cliches packed into its runtime. The story started with the James Gang robbing a train in broad daylight. Hot on their trail was Sheriff Mark Rowley, played by Scott, alongside his younger brother and Deputy John and another deputy named Mercer. Enter the crooked U.S. Marshal Bill Hampton, who tried steering the group the wrong way, but they weren't fooled. They stayed on course and captured outlaw lookout Kid Coyote, played of course by Hayes. Things got crazy quickly. Mercer was shot by outlaw Hank McGee, and when John tried taking Kid Coyote back to town, Hampton tried to kill them both. Out of nowhere, Jesse James stepped in to stop him and took the wounded John to the outlaw hideout of Quinto. Meanwhile, Hampton twisted the story, making it seem like John was a member of the James Gang, which made Sheriff Mark ride into Bad Man's Territory alone to clear his brother's name. Along the way, Mark met Henrietta Alcott, a determined English reporter played by Ann Richards. Romance bloomed naturally, and she joined the mission to bring justice to Quinto by getting citizens to join the new Oklahoma Territory. The film zigzagged through outlaw meetings, square dances, political appointments, and horse races, ending with the bad guys turning the tables by putting Hampton in charge of law enforcement and making the Rowley brothers the outlaws. Despite the messy plot, the film was a box office hit, making over $500,000 in profit. It even caught the attention of Variety magazine, which praised it as good entertainment for adult audiences. The success pushed producer Natty Holt and Randolph Scott to team up again for Trail Street in 1947, another Western mixed with real-life figures. Shifting again from goofy charm to serious storytelling, Trail Street, directed by Ray Enright, followed the legendary Bat Masterson, played by Randolph Scott, as he stepped into the town of Liberal, Kansas, ready to clean up corruption and protect farmers from an aggressive cattle baron. It marked a change in tone, blending a more mature approach with its usual cheap Western flavor. Gabby Hayes returned, now promoted to deputy, and brought his signature humor to lighten the action-heavy story. Robert Ryan, fresh off cementing his villainous persona in Crossfire, played a noble banker caught in a land war. Ann Jeffries played a conflicted dance hall girl with a soft spot for the villain, played by Steve Brody, who was also Ryan's rival for Jeffries' affection. The plot spun through land disputes, wrongful accusations, ambushes, and emotional entanglements, with Masterson firmly siding with the underdogs to restore order. Then came Return of the Bad Men in 1948, another Enright-directed project from RKO. The film reunited Scott, Ryan, Jeffries, Hayes, and Brody in a sort of greatest hits lineup of Old West outlaws. The concept, round up every legendary bad guy, whether they ever met or not, and throw them at Randolph Scott to see what happens. It should have been epic, but the film struggled to live up to its promise. Robert Ryan played the Sundance Kid with villainous flair, and Anne Jeffries returned as Cheyenne, Wild Bill Doolin's niece, torn between loyalty and romance. Hayes, in Tendencia, an unexpected twist, played a bank president this time around. The film tried to wrangle romance, politics, and gunfights into a single storyline, but the characters lacked depth, and the love triangle was resolved with a whimper instead of a bang. Even the sweeping Oklahoma land rush finale couldn't quite pull it all together. By the late 1940s, though, the sun was starting to set on the Western boom. Tastes were shifting, and the demand wasn't what it used to be. That's when Hayes saddled up for one last ride in 1950's The Caribou Trail. This wasn't just a dusty saloon brawl of a movie. It was a frontier adventure with a northern twist, set in the rugged Canadian wilderness instead of the usual tumbleweeds towns of the American West. The star of the show was Randolph Scott, one of the steadiest actors in Hollywood. He was backed by a whole group of recognizable faces: Dale Robertson, Jim Davis, Bill Williams, and of course Gabby Hayes himself. The ever-reliable Victor Jory played the villain Frank Walsh, while supporting players like Douglas Kennedy and James Griffith rounded out the crew. Karen Booth brought charm and a little romantic tension as the saloon owner Francie. Now the story kicks off with Jim Red Fern, Scott's character, dreaming of greener pastures. He and his two pals Mike, played by Williams, and Ling Lee, Tung Fu, are driving cattle from Montana to British Columbia along the historic Caribou Trail. But they hit trouble fast. They try to cross a toll bridge run by the corrupt Frank Walsh without paying, and in return Walsh's men stampede their herd. Chaos follows. Mike loses an arm, the cattle are gone, their big dreams crushed, at least for now. Jim, Ling, and their new mountain man buddy Grizzly, that's Hayes, try to start over by turning to gold prospecting. Just when it seems like things might turn around, they're captured by indigenous warriors. They escape, but not together. Jim ends up alone, surviving the wilderness until he stumbles upon a creek glittering with enough gold to make a new life. Soon the crew gets back together. They link up with Grizzly's relatives Martha and Jane, plus a no-nonsense foreman named Will. Together they form a new cattle venture, aiming to drive a fresh herd into that gold-filled valley Jim found. But old enemies haven't forgotten them. Walsh and his men are lurking, ready to make life difficult. And then there's Francie. She's got a soft spot for Jim, but Walsh wants her too. That love triangle adds an extra dose of tension to the already rough trail ahead. The Caribou Trail may not have aimed for the Oscars, but it delivered solid entertainment. At just 81 minutes, it packs in enough plot twists, showdowns, and cattle drives to satisfy any Western fan. Nat Holt handled the production, with 20th Century Fox taking care of distribution. Visually, it's a bit of a mixed bag. Some scenes look absolutely gorgeous, especially the second unit shots filmed out in Colorado, but most of the main cast never left California. Indoor soundstage scenes are mixed with real outdoor footage shot in places like Bronson Canyon and LA's Griffith Park. If you've hiked there, you'll definitely recognize the backdrop. And here's a fun tech tidbit. The film was originally shot in 2-strip Cinecolor, but for decades most people only saw it in black and white. That changed when Kino Lorber restored it to its original color after over a year of work. Now you can finally watch the Caribou Trail the way it was meant to be seen: dusty trails, golden valleys, and all. After his run on the silver screen with the Caribou Trail, Gabby Hayes did something not every cowboy did. He rode straight into America's living rooms. That's right, he made the leap to television, kicking things off with The Gabby Hayes Show. Now this wasn't just any Western. It originally started out in 1950 under a different name, The Quaker Oats Show. Because yes, our man Gabby was teamed up with a bowl of breakfast cereal. Picture it. 1950, kids huddled around the TV, eyes wide as Gabby Hayes appeared on screen. Perched in a general store in a dusty little place called Quaker Canyon, he'd be whittling away, spinning yarns that somehow always circled back to cereal. And in one unforgettable bit of TV history, Gabby would ask viewers to step back from the screen, then fire a cannon loaded with cereal right at it. This was their fun way of playing off the Quaker Oats slogan, "Shot from guns." And yes, the name of the show changed to The Gabby Hayes Show in 1951, but the charm stayed the same. This live half-hour show wasn't just yeehaw and slapstick. Each episode focused on historical events. Horton Foote and Jerome Coopersmith wrote the scripts, and they were filmed live in NBC Studio 3A at Rockefeller Center, all on a modest budget of about $5,500 per episode. Yet despite the tight purse strings, by the end of 1950, people in 39 cities across the U.S. were tuning in to watch Gabby spin tales about the Lewis and Clark expedition, Buffalo Bill as a boy, the Battle of the Alamo, and more. Then in December 1951, NBC launched a brand new version of The Gabby Hayes Show, this time in a quicker 15-minute weekday format. At first it aired 3 times a week, but soon it became a daily fixture at 5:15 p.m. The format: Gabby would tell these hilarious tall tales about his imaginary wild family, and in between his stories, they'd cut to scenes from classic cheap westerns. Since the show was so short, they'd stretch a single movie across a whole week. And just when you thought it was over, Gabby would pop back up with another knee-slapping tale. In early 1952, the show featured rising stars like Ross Martin as Wyatt, Earp and Betty Gard as Belle Starr. But TV schedules are tricky, and by January 27, 1952, the Sunday edition of Gabby's show was canceled. Still, the weekday version held strong until January 1, 1954. Even after that, Gabby didn't hang up his spurs just yet. When Buffalo Bob Smith had to step away from the Howdy Doody show to recover from a heart attack, who filled in? None other than Gabby himself. And in true cowboy fashion, Gabby wasn't just a TV host. He ran a summer ranch camp for boys and girls in East Jewett, New York, fittingly named the Gabby Hayes Ranch. But Gabby's legacy wasn't just on screen. From the late 1940s through the 1950s, Charlton and Fawcett published a whole comic book series in his name. And even after he retired from regular television, he kept popping up here and there, especially on Howdy Doody, catching up with his old pal Buffalo Bob. Now behind the bushy beard and those gruff on-screen rants was a man deeply in love with his wife. They were married for 43 years and she was his everything. While directors might have given him notes on his performance, it was only his wife's opinion that truly mattered. Sadly, she passed away on July 5, 1957, and Gabby was left absolutely heartbroken. They never had children, which made the loss hit even harder. After her death, he spent some time living at his Toluca Lake Ranch in California, later moving into a small apartment building he owned. As the years went by, Gabby's health started to decline. In early 1969, he was admitted to St. Joseph Hospital in Burbank to receive treatment for heart disease. Just a week later, on February 9, 1969, he passed away at the age of 83. He was laid to rest at Forest Lawn Hollywood Hills Cemetery. Thank you for watching.